Welcome into another edition of Steak, Bourbon, and Sports. I am Ari Temkin. And as always, I am joined by Jeremy Mandel and his Belgium flag behind him in his house. I'm never really sure what exactly. Is it a Mark Rothko? Is that what I'm looking at?
Frankly, I'm not entirely sure. It was bought at MoMA by my great grandparents, and when you're the great grandchild and they pass away, you just kind of take whatever's fallen off the tree. You're not really in any position to be choosy about things. You just, okay, you want to give me that one? I'll take that one.
Just has it's a very prominent placement. And I've been in your house many times and I always wondered, is it some sort of flag? It kind of looks like the Belgian flag.
I feel like it's a very non-prominent place in my house, but if you turn it 45 degrees, it's the German flag.
Ah.
But the stripes are all vertical.
Yes.
And it's why. Really, I never really totally got, why does the Jewish family have something that so closely resembles the German flag?
Yeah.
Especially like of my great grandparents, like that's the era where they really watched for that stuff. And right. By the time I had enough mental awareness to even recognize it, they were gone. So I never did get to ask, but yeah. No.
This is Steak, Bourbon, and Sports. This is the show in which we eat steak, drink bourbon, and talk about sports. Sometimes a little bit of one thing and less of the other, and vice versa, and on and on and on. Today,
any other things we wish we did with dead people that we could start the show off on? It's a really great, joyous note that we can get this going with. Any more regrets with the deceased?
No,
Last call.
I think I'm all set. I think I'm all set for the moment. I'll have to get back to you on that. But I guess by popular demand, we are being asked to talk football. Is that what's happened here?
Well, I have questions for you.
Okay.
Because as give the people your resume. Why are you in a position to know football? I know better, but what?
I'm not.
That's true. Okay, but I'll do it for you now. Ari hosts is Big 12's every day again now, right?
Yes. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Ari co-hosts every morning the Big 12 radio show on Sirius, which is on channel what?
375.
375 on
Big 12
XM,
this morning.
So listen to Big 12 this morning. So he talks about the Big 12 there. And then he does pregame and postgame on the Dallas Cowboys radio network.
That one is true.
So these are
which I found out recently is also on Sirius XM, which I probably should have known, but
look at you.
I know.
You got a whole audience you weren't aware of. So Ari talks a lot in his everyday life about college and professional football. So you're kind of, is it back to normal? So I know the sports are not back to normal. Is it back to normal for you?
Yeah. Why are the sports not back to normal? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, there's like barely any fans or no fans, and you can't cover the team like you normally would in person. But I gotta think schedule wise, you're back to normal, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's very different. I would normally be, at the Cowboys facility at least once a week for, media availabilities and open locker room and stuff. But that access is obviously extremely limited. I mean, nobody's, going in for open locker rooms or anything, but even, access to press conferences and stuff is extremely limited. So it's difficult, I mean, I'll tell you what, I lived in San Antonio for 6.5 years, as you know. Jeremy, you live in San Antonio.
It took us a long time to get rid of you. Longer than you ever thought it would.
And I covered the Spurs, and I would go to a lot of games, and I would be there a lot. And then the year that I had my son, who's now going to be 5 in November, I didn't go to any games because I thought, I don't need to go. Why? I can watch all the games on TV. I can see all the post-game press conferences on television or on the internet. And I mean, it was this great experiment of, how well can you really know a team by not being there? And what I learned through that experiment was it's difficult because the things that you really need to pick up on are the things you can't really see on television. It's not the basketball. It's everything else. It's the way that the coach interacts with the players. It's the way the players interact with each other. It's just noticing all the different nuances of the team dynamic and the players that give you insights into what's happening in that locker room that you can't really tell from
So
TV.
it has nothing to do with like actually talking to the players, then I guess, because
No,
like
it does
using your
too. It does
well,
too.
but use your time covering the Spurs as an example. I mean, they're not giving you much of anything, right?
That's true. It's true. The
So I
dynamic
mean,
covering the Cowboys and being in the locker room way different than the Spurs for sure.
yeah. So I mean, covering the Spurs regularly is kind of like covering the Cowboys in a pandemic. Um,
It's true. It's true.
you're well trained for this.
But like last year, I got so many insights into Dak Prescott. I mean, he's a polarizing figure, but he's just a really good dude, genuine, nice guy, down to earth. And so it's like
Is he a polarizing figure?
he is. Yeah, he is.
Really, it's not just me.
It's not just you. No, it's
Oh, see, you always look at me as if it's just me.
yeah, because I like to think you're a relatively intelligent person.
Oh well.
And then I hear your Dak takes come wildly in. I mean, your Dak takes are really just a byproduct of your love of the great Theodore Romo.
I don't think his name was Theodore.
I don't think so either, but it just sounded better. It sounded more
I don't think
pronounced.
are there any Hispanic people named Theodore?
I think Tony Romo is so overrated as a broadcaster. Have I ever said that
Oh
before?
my God. This will be the end of our podcast.
You cannot
cease
see
being-
Tony Romo for anything other than the greatest at everything that he ever tries to do.
Well, in fairness
other than
to
winning
me
the playoffs.
in fairness to me on this particular topic, I'm going to let that roll right off my back. You're on one side of this argument, just as a broadcaster. You're on one side of this argument, and I and the CBS network and their millions of dollars are on the other side of this argument. So I feel pretty good about this.
That's fair. I will say his energy is great. Like he does, the way that he's into a game is fun and but I also don't really care about you predicting what's going to happen. I'd rather you analyze what happened in the play. And I think the more removed he becomes from the game and the defenses and stuff, the more work he's going to have to put in order to analyze.
Well, they're paying him enough money to put in the work, first of all. But what I enjoy about the predictive stuff is it helps me be more educated as it unfolds live. Like I'm looking for this because there was this motion or they're in such and such coverage, so they're making sure that they don't do X. I enjoy that more. And that's what I liked about John Madden too. So I don't think this is I love Tony Romo thing, even though I do. I think he's very good at it.
Okay, so you have football questions for me. Is that what that's the purpose of this exercise today?
I do. And
non-Tony Romo related football questions, I'd imagine.
Well, all football questions can find their way to Tony Romo, and we'll see how many times I can do that during this podcast. You want to start college or pro?
Okay, let me start with something that I don't believe. Can I start with that?
Sure.
Okay, so the NFL announced today that there's 0 positive cases of COVID-19 among players from September 13th to September 19th. They tested 2,438 players, a total of 14,000 times. That's crazy. Tested 2,438 players 14,000 times during that stretch, and all of them tested negative.
So every single one of the 14,000 tests came back negative?
Yeah. This week did see 5 new positive tests among team personnel, but the individuals were isolated and not allowed into team facilities. I do not believe that the NFL has 0 positive tests. I don't believe it. I do not believe it. Not for a second.
0 out of 14,000 when you're not like bubbling yourself out like the NBA did. That's pretty rough. I didn't know that the number was that big.
What's just the rate of one in how many people in America has it?
Like has it currently right now?
Yeah, like what's the rate of like every 1 in 15 people?
No, I think it tests to be more people than that because it's like 1 out of every 10 tests are positive, but that's if you're getting the test already. So there's like a whole section of the population who's not getting a test that week. So that all has to be figured in. So
I'm just saying it's probably better than
but whatever the number is,
2,438, right?
Whatever the number is, it's not 0.
It's not 0.
So 0 is not the correct answer. So it's my favorite broadcast term. I don't know. It's just a regular term, I guess. It strains credulity
I think
I
it's
like that.
credulity.
No.
Yeah, the D is more of a J sound. Credulity.
Isn't it
Credulity.
like,
Whatever. Go
well,
ahead. Yes?
this is riveting stuff
I
here.
know.
So I can't believe people wanted this. Um, so there's no way that 14,000 tests came back negative. It's
No
just,
way.
I'm sorry.
I do not believe it.
And look, I hate agreeing with you, but you're absolutely right about that.
there is a
Um,
0% chance that there are zero positive tests.
well, far be it from Roger Goodell to withhold the truth about anything. Um, but all right. So, got a few questions for you. Number one,
Okay.
who are the real Dallas Cowboys? The first half Cowboys or the second half Cowboys?
Yes.
So you think this is just all a part of the total Dallas Cowboy 2020 experience?
I think the Cowboys, the expectation for the Cowboys is a really good offense that can score a ton of points with a decent pass rush. And so therefore the decent pass rush would mean that you have an okay defense. We haven't seen a decent pass rush or an okay defense yet.
Well, see, but I think the defense, I feel like an idiot saying this when they just allowed 39 points, but I thought they played pretty well. I mean, in the first half, there were, what, 3 or 4 turnovers that
Yeah, 3
were
turnovers.
like in the red zone already?
Yeah. Put them in a tough spot for sure. But they
Yeah,
they just so rarely get stops.
yeah, I mean, I'm
It's
not
like,
saying it's like the 2000 Ravens or something like that, but um, you see, I cited the greatest defense of all time.
no, you didn't.
So, speaking of frauds, the Chicago Bears.
Probably,
One of the
yes.
so one of the questions I wanted to talk about was, okay, there's 0-2 teams, and you hear all these stats every single year about if you start 0-2, it's almost impossible to make the playoffs. I wanted to look at the other end of that, the teams that are 2-0, who's for real, who's not. And when I went down the list, it was like the best answer for this question is obviously the Bears, and there's not a second choice.
In terms of like who's a fraud 2-0 team.
Right. Like, what better candidate could there possibly be for that?
I mean, it
Okay,
so
I will list. I'm going
they're
to
all
list the two
fraud.
and 0.
Let me say it this way: they're all frauds. The only ones that are not frauds are Seattle.
Uh-huh.
Seattle's a good team. Who else is 2-0?
So I'll just give you the whole list: Arizona, Seattle, the Rams, the Bears, the Packers, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Titans, and the Bills. I mean, it's not murderer's row here,
I don't
but
know.
I think it's
So the thing I have about the NFL is 4 weeks. 4 weeks.
right.
It's a quarter of the season. You can learn a lot about a team based on 4 weeks of 4 weeks of football, 4 games. So I reserve judgment for the first 2 games. Yeah, I mean the Bears certainly look like frauds. I'm not going to sit here and say the Bears are a good team, but they're as fraudulent as any other 2-0 team is right now.
I think they're more
and by the way,
fraudulent than the
I
Chiefs.
think there will be an 0-2 playoff team. It's like the math. I hate that stupid 90% of the time you start 0-2, you don't make the playoffs. But it's like, yeah, that's because most teams that start 0-2 aren't good. But there are occasionally good teams that start 0-2 that bounce back and make the playoff. The Texans were like 0-4 last year, something crazy.
And God willing, will be again.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, I just think you got to wait. You got to wait 4 weeks before you can really tell what you have.
so after week 4, you will reliably be able to tell me what we're going to see the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if it happens once, it's an anomaly. If it happens multiple times, it's a pattern, and that's you pick up patterns after 4 weeks. That's I guess what I'm trying to say. Like, so far the pattern I've seen from what have you seen any patterns from the Cowboys?
No, and I think that's the point.
Their secondary's bad. That's a pattern.
Well, okay, fine. But as a team together, I think they're very erratic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think line play has been crappy, but that's subject to health. The secondary hasn't been good, which is not surprising. But by and large, like, the pass rush has had fantastic moments and terrible moments. The passing game has had fabulous moments and terrible moments.
I don't think the pass rush has had fantastic moments. I think the pass rush has been a major disappointment.
I think Aldon Smith in week 1 was really good.
Yeah, but I
mean,
mean really good would have been like 2 sacks. Like he was good. He was good.
Is DeMarcus Lawrence still on the Cowboys?
He is still on the Cowboys. Yeah, they could use him making plays occasionally. Occasionally, he can
Has he
occasionally
played?
make plays. Yes, he's playing a lot. He's out there a lot.
Is he hurt?
No, not to my knowledge.
Oh,
He is MIA. He is. He's a guy that's got to step up for sure. I mean, you pay a guy that much money, you expect that he's going to be a game wrecker, and it's not his fault they paid him the money, but that's the expectation.
It's kind of his fault. It's a little bit his fault that they paid him the money.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's he going to do? Say no? No, I'm not. I'm not worth this money. Please, I'm not going to accept that.
Jerry hasn't offered it to me. He's had some sacks.
I mean, you go through that list of 2-0 teams again, and like most of those teams, you expect they're going to be good anyways.
Right.
I guess the weird thing to me is how is COVID-19 impacting football? Like, how? Well, I think we'll truly see this in like 6 weeks, right? Because then we'll see like, okay, the defense for the Cowboys took some time to get going, or like this took some time to get going. Like that's when we'll see it. But at this point now, it's like we're just kind of grasping for what you normally look at to analyze, and it's hard to do that because there's like they didn't have any.
The really interesting thing is, what is home field advantage? Does it matter? Does it matter for some teams more than others? Like the Cowboys had some fans. Does that give them a huge home field advantage against, I don't know, the Eagles? I think the Eagles had no fans.
Right. Well, Seattle is a good example. The Cowboys go to Seattle this weekend, and that's normally a very difficult place to play, but there's going to be no fans there.
Right. So does this matter? Does it not matter? I noticed it was interesting during the 6+ point favorites last week had like an amazing record. And usually in a regular NFL season, that's split about 50-50, and the favorites were just killing it. So I don't know if it's home field.
Tells you home teams are usually favored, right?
Right.
I mean, part of it is there because of travel. Like you still have to travel, you still have to stay in a hotel. So it's still all those things. Obviously, you're not in a situation where the fans are impacting anything like they normally would be. I mean, you think Seattle, like it's loud. It's really loud there always. So, on offense, it's tough to make checks to line of scrimmage or do things that you need verbal cues from because, you can't hear if it's so loud. And it's funny because the Cowboys never have a home field advantage. The Cowboys it's such a weird dynamic where, they go and play in cities. I mean, they play the Washington football team, and there's more Cowboys fans there than Washington football team fans, or L.A. I mean, like they have a great away home field advantage in some places, but yet they've never had a home field advantage. And I think part of that, at least what Jerry wants you to believe, is that it's a destination stadium, so they bring in a ton of opposing fans. So like here's a situation where you're not going to have opposing fans in the stadium, so you have kind of the first opportunity for the Cowboys to actually have a real legitimate home field advantage here where they actually have fans.
Is that something the players are cognizant of?
What?
Like specifically on the Cowboys, that whole home field sort of phenomenon that they get specifically, are they aware of that? Do they care about that?
I would imagine if you played other places and then you played for the Cowboys, you'd see a significant difference. You'd feel a significant difference. But I mean, there's so many.
But it's not something that they discuss though,
like,
or at least around you.
Why do we not have a great home field advantage?
Or just like we're going to LA and half the stadium was rooting for us, and then we came home and played the Packers, and there was a noticeable amount of green and yellow in the stands.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they can't not notice it, but I mean, it certainly isn't a discussion I've had with anybody on the Cowboys. But it's America's team, and the popularity of the Cowboys is so widespread. So it's just this weird dynamic, right? I mean, it's it's not like they don't have good fans. Like they've got crazy fans. Like I've seen Cowboys fans that have like, remember the Dak's rookie year, there was like a dude I saw that had like, he made a Dak Zeke CD that he was like a singer, and he had like all these Dak and Zeke tattoos all over his body. And it was like they have crazy fans. Cowboys have crazy fans.
It was really good of that guy to stop getting laid for 5 minutes so that he could produce that. Taking time away from his busy schedule of
this weird
just
example,
knocking him dead.
It's a weird example that stands out to me, but
so hard right turn.
okay.
I was told whatever number of weeks ago by both you and Matt Moscana, who was our guest that week, because it was whatever week the Pac-12 and Big Ten announced they weren't playing. That was when we talked. And Matt was going through all the reasons that it was going to be bad for Pac-12 and Big Ten schools. Players are going to transfer, all these things. So I said, well, can't they just reverse course on this? And both of you were emphatic that no, they cannot reverse course on this. This is a done deal. Now, what happened afterwards is the Big Ten reverse course. So
do you remember why I said specifically why they wouldn't reverse course?
Are you asking because you don't remember or because you're setting me up?
No, because I don't remember.
I think you had said something about complex schedules and all that kind of stuff.
That doesn't sound like something I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the reaction that you have whenever you end up being wrong about something. But
okay, I'm not wrong here. The Big Ten is wrong. Okay, don't put this on me. The Pac-12 and the Big Ten.
Well, but the point
wrong.
of me bringing it up, was not to dunk on you about this, although I have, and it was fun.
I've been dunking on the Big Ten and the Pac-12 for weeks. It's been amazing. You don't get to dunk on me for this. It's been so much fun, especially the Big Ten. The Big Ten is like just sitting in a room by itself, smelling its own farts. Like that's what the Big Ten does. That's perpetually what the Big Ten does. Like, look at how awesome I am. Look at how great I am. I'm amazing. I'm the Big Ten.
So do they get in the national playoff or no?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
you have no issue, like, because I guess they're going to finish before it's already scheduled, right?
Yeah, dude. I have no. Teams are going to play between 5 and 8 games this year. Like it is going to be. They've already canceled Wake Forest, Notre Dame. I mean, there's rumors that Kansas State, Oklahoma is going to get canceled. I'm kind of hoping at this point that Kansas, Baylor gets canceled. Although I do feel bad for Baylor because they're 0 for 3 in trying to play a game. Like it is, and this is why it's like the NFL's like they have 0 positives. Like, are you kidding me? Right. Like college football is having, and I get it. Like they're on campus and there's a bunch of people on campus, but like you cannot tell me the NFL has 0 positives at NCAA.
Well, I mean the fun thing, college, you knew this was going to happen because you can't get like in the big universities cases like tens of thousands of 18 to 22-year-olds and tell them, okay, everyone stay in your dorms. And don't drink, don't party, don't get together in big groups.
It's not going to happen.
Like, you're an idiot.
Right.
So the fact that this is happening.
Anybody who lives in the real world knows that was not going to happen.
Yeah, and you can argue about, like, given that, should they be coming back or should they have ever thought this was going to work? And you can fall on either side of that debate. And Lord knows you and I are not educated enough to have a real opinion about it. Though having said that, that's never stopped us before.
Well, I mean, it's
but this was
more
so
on the universities for opening
up
campus and having like school, like you kind of invite it when you're like, yeah, 30,000 kids, come on, we need your money, we need you.
And that's just it. Most of these campuses, any school with a medical school has some epidemiologists hanging around. They're like, hey guys, this is a terrible idea.
You want to keep getting funded? Shut up.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think the conversation was. Epidemiologist says, hey, school president, board of trustees or whatever, this is a terrible idea and tons of students are going to get infected. To which the school president replies, okay, I'll let you know when your direct deposit paycheck is going to start again. And then the epidemiologist is like, oh, you know what? I think we can handle it. It's fine.
They're fine. They'll get over it. It's no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
So long-winded way to answer your question. But yeah, they should get to the playoff because nobody's going to play 10 games. Nobody's going to play 10 games. So you're going to have uneven schedules everywhere. And so, the Big Ten will also have an uneven schedule. It's going to be crazy to try to like figure out the
Yeah,
college
how do you
football
judge
playoff.
that? Like, there's a team that's 5-0 versus a team that's 7-1.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
usually you'd say the 5-0 team gets in, but this other team played 3 more
Right.
games.
Right.
So
I,
how do you?
I
I
have
mean,
no idea. And then on
well,
top of that,
you're gonna have to figure it out because you're gonna have to talk about it every morning.
well, I mean, on top
But
of that, you have, you don't have any matchups between conferences. So,
right,
like, you only have conferences playing it. So, I mean, what's going to happen is it's going to be like, well, we'll just give 2 spots to the SEC, 1 to the Big Ten, and then, I don't know, a grab bag of somebody else. That's what's going to happen.
yeah.
2 SEC teams, a
Um,
Big Ten team, and then maybe, UCF. No, probably not. But, like, the Big 12 or something.
I
Pac-12, Big 12.
I have an idea for a game show,
Okay.
and I don't know if this is going to be a regular feature, but I certainly have the ammunition this week. Let's
We're
play
pretty
a
good at
game
thinking things will become a regular feature and then never
and
following
then just
up on
forgetting
that.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a fun feature for this week, and then you'll probably never hear about it again. Actually, once I tell you what it is, then hopefully we don't ever hear about it again. But the game is called "Is This Sexist?"
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe not a game we should do every week.
But it's
But
topical this week in the whiskey world.
okay.
So
That's good to know.
I'll
By the
tell
way,
you
I
why.
think you and I are great arbiters of what is sexist.
I think that 2 white Jewish men in their 30s
Totally.
are we're the people that should be turned to for these sorts of decisions.
Totally.
I await a ding in my email or my phone to ring or whatever with cases of this so that Ari and I can arbitrate this important issue. But anyway, my inbox is full right now. I got all the ammunition I need. Have you ever heard of a guy named Jim Murray?
No.
So let me tell you who Jim Murray is. Jim Murray, once a year, he's one of the very first kind of in-depth whiskey reviewers, whiskey journalists, I guess. And once a year, and I think this is like year 15 or so of him putting out what's called the Whiskey Bible. And in the Whiskey Bible, he reviews basically everything that's come out that year and gives you like the Jim Murray Whiskey Bible Award for Best American Whiskey, Best Scotch, Best Irish Whiskey, Best Rye, all that stuff. Best Limited Edition Product of the Year. And it's a big, hairy deal if you get that. And your sales spike and people start paying way too much for your bottles. Oftentimes, I don't understand whatsoever why he's picked the things that he's picked, but that's completely subjective.
Totally.
But anyway, so he's been doing this for a long time. It's a big deal when it comes out. Just if you're curious, his choice for best bourbon of the year, best bourbon of the year was Stag Junior, which is, I mean, don't get me wrong, Stag Junior is fine, but calling that the whiskey of the year is insane. But
and what does that mean, whiskey of the year? Is that like the
it means,
whiskey
in
of
his
2020?
opinion, yeah, it means
But
in his
like,
opinion, over the last year, this is the best whiskey that has been released.
okay, so it doesn't matter if it's a 10-year, 12-year.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I mean, now he further breaks it down, and he says, okay, what's the best whiskey between 8 and 10 years,
Okay.
and all that. But then there's the overarching, what is the best bourbon of the year? And he'll do that for all the major categories, and then do like an overall champion. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about a little down the line is just women in whiskey in general. I'm working out the details with some potential guests. But for the first time, there are enough women in whiskey and they're getting enough of a voice that when the 2020 Whiskey Bible was released last week, some folks are saying, hey, this is a little weird and I don't think this is right. And you should not be celebrating this guy when he describes things this way. So if it's okay with you, Ari, I'd like to try a few of the descriptors on you.
Okay, so people, women in particular, in whiskey, are complaining about the Bible because of the way that Jim Murray describes the whiskey.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so now we are going to decide if that's legitimate or if it's just.
Yeah, I'm going to read you a couple examples.
If it's just agreed, if it's just snowflake stuff.
Yeah, or are people too sensitive? Maybe that's the answer. I don't think it will be after I read this to you, but we'll find out. Okay, so this is on the Canadian Club Chronicles. It's called the Water of Windsor, and it was aged 41 years. This is a Canadian whiskey that's 41 years old. Quote, have I had this much fun with a sexy 41-year-old Canadian before? Well, yes, I have. But it was a few years back now, and it wasn't a whiskey. Was the fun we had better? Probably not. It's hard to imagine what could be, as this whiskey simply seduces you with the lightness and knowledgeable meaning of its touch, butterfly kissing your taste buds, finding time after time your whiskey erogenous zone or G spots, and then surrendering itself with tender and total submission.
Is this guy drinking whiskey? Or is he making sweet, sweet love to whiskey? Because that's what it sounds like.
You don't describe whiskey this way? Is that not how you...
I don't know that I've ever tried whiskey, but like the butterfly kisses melted on my tongue.
You ready for another one?
Yes. This guy sounds like a pervert. I don't know if it's sexist. It's just perverted.
Well, and he's an older...
Clearly.
He's probably in his 60s or 70s, and he looks every bit of it.
Has he always written this way? Because it seems weird that like now suddenly people are like, wait a second, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Well, see, like for example, with me, I don't read the damn thing. There's always a headline that says, okay, here's who won in all the categories.
Right.
And so I said, oh, okay, so-and-so won. Great. And I move on with my day. And I don't actually read what he writes. Here's what he had to say about the Glenmorangie Artisan casks. If whiskey could be sexed, this would be a woman. Every time I encounter Morangi Artisan, it pops up with a new look, a different perfume, and mood. It appears not to be able to make up its mind, but does it know how to pout, seduce, and win your heart? Oh, yes.
What?
This one's my personal
favorite. It's not sexist, it's just weird. Like, I mean, it's sexist from a standpoint of here's an older man writing about whiskey as if it's a woman.
Here's this older man being creepy. And then telling us after he's had a lot to drink what his favorite thing was. This one's my favorite. It's not the longest, but it is my favorite. This was on a whiskey called Fanny's Bay Tasmanian Single Malt in a bourbon cask. No port, no sherry, just the wonderful opportunity to taste naked fannies.
Huh.
An Odell Beckham Jr. fan.
How did this guy get the credibility to put together a list like this that people care about?
I think, sometimes, and this is a phenomenon that I think happens way too often, but I think sometimes you get notoriety for just being the first at something.
Yeah.
Like he was doing this before anybody else was doing this. So once everybody else got into it, it was this guy who's been ranking whiskeys and giving awards, and the distilleries advertised the heck out of it. And actually, one of the big deals is this year for the first time, because of all the hubbub created by this, and I'm not done reading these, by the way. The Beam Suntory, who makes the whiskey that was awarded the top spot this year, essentially put out something that said, while we appreciate that this was well reviewed and you enjoyed our product, we sure wish you'd stop being so creepy.
There's so much interest in whiskey. Like, why isn't there a board? Like, why is this not?
We have this whole podcast and people are still listening to this guy. It's ridiculous.
Right. I mean, we should come up with our own whiskey awards.
That's actually a good idea. We should do that. But this one is a little longer than the last one, but it's almost equally as good as Tasting Naked Fannies.
Okay.
It's from 2017, and this is how he described
Tasting Naked Fannies.
Yeah, just the wonderful opportunity to taste naked fannies.
Oh.
So that's fun.
He's eating ass? Is that what I'm led to believe?
I'm not sure if that's what he thinks, and this gets into a lot. Are we complimenting the whiskey with this? Are we insulting the whiskey with this? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we are on that.
I just know I'm uncomfortable. Like if I'm ever alone with a bottle of whiskey, I might look at the whiskey and be like, I'm not thinking about it.
And Ari, you haven't seen a picture of this guy. And look, it's not okay for anyone to say this, but it's especially weird for somebody who looks like this guy to say it. So here he is in 2017 on the Highland Park 40-year-old Scotch. Like a 40-year-old woman who has kept her figure and looks, and now only satin stands in the way between you and so much beauty and experience. And believe me, she's spicy.
Does he describe every bottle like a woman? Literally, you could just go down
No,
every one.
no, I mean,
What are other ways he used to describe whiskey? Because like,
well, a lot of the like just regular stuff, but he tries to make like prose about it, which is insane if you ask me. Like, here's my like I'm drinking right now Doc Swinson's 15-year-old, and we can talk about this later if we want. It's based, they don't make their own. It's a contract distiller. Rumor is this is wild turkey, but no one has fessed up. But here's my review. I'm going to take a sip. That was good.
what was good about it?
Do you care?
I mean,
Like,
no, it's a
if I
good point.
said,
But he doesn't
like,
get to
if
write a book if he doesn't give you some kind of description on it. You know?
well, sure, but I mean, he's tasting enough whiskeys that like you can probably fill like 100-page book with it's good, it's bad. I mean, and not that he should do that, but there are ways. I've been tasting and describing whiskey for years now without ever comparing it to any sexual anything. So I don't know why this is totally necessary. So this game show will probably never be played again because I loaded it up with just obvious yeses. But if anyone has anything sexist that they'd like me to read on the air here,
Yeah, that's a good call.
I gotta tell you, I had a good time with that.
We can. You don't have anything else to read in there?
Do you want more?
Okay, so what's the response been? Like that it's sexist, that it's creepy?
So this is relatively new. It's been I want to say like 2 or 3 days since this has gotten to be a big deal, and I think the reason there was so much delay between everything coming out and the complaints about this are because I think a lot of people just do exactly what I've been doing for years.
Right.
Is online it'll say, okay, it'll just list it out. Okay, here are the awards. Great, read the awards. I've had that. I haven't had that, and then I move on with my day. Usually, I'll talk about how he's a moron because he likes stuff that I don't think should be getting the awards that they get. But whatever. That's different than being a really creepy old man, which clearly he is.
Tasting
and I say old.
fannies.
I have no idea how old he actually is. Yeah, he is tasting naked fannies. I guess it's a compliment. That's the part that really I can't get.
Well, it
past.
depends on if the whiskey wants, it's salad tossed. Because if it doesn't, then it's not a compliment.
And I've always found that whiskey and salad is a terrible combination.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about whiskey in terms of like the context of fellowship and meeting people and being exposed to, different people and different personality. We've kind of talked a lot about that.
Right.
Have you ever considered whiskey a sexual experience?
Not yet. I mean, I can get my wife. She's in the other room. We'll see how she feels about it. I haven't.
I mean that like, because I'm just trying to like think about this through the lens of like sexualizing it, and that's
so.
It's not
I've
sexist. It's just weird and creepy. I guess it could be sexist because there's women who drink whiskey and they may feel that way about the whiskey bottle as a man. I guess I don't know, right?
And he wouldn't be. He's not comparing the 41-year-old Canadian whiskey to a 41-year-old Canadian man. Like, why does it have to be that? Like, clearly that's just where you go. But
that's weird anyways. Like that's the whole point is the women who drink whiskey shouldn't be mad that he's comparing whiskey bottles to women. And that in lieu of that, it should be men. It's just weird. And I don't know that drinking whiskey is a sexual experience.
Well, I got to tell you though, especially as women get these higher levels of notoriety and higher levels of responsibility, and not just at like an isolated distillery here or there, but everywhere, and they should be everywhere.
Right.
Jim Murray is a guy who's got some notoriety, And if you're, say, Old Forester has multiple well qualified women in high level decision making roles. If you're any one of those ladies and you're supposed to take a meeting with Jim Murray, do you want to take that meeting?
No. But I also don't want to take that meeting with Jim Murray, and I'm a man.
Yeah, but I feel like it's a different experience though. Like Jim Murray's not going to get like overly sexual with me about my whiskey, and it's not going to be suggestive even if he does. But if I'm like a, I don't know, 40 something year old woman and he's been talking about how he's had 41-year-old woman sexual conquests in his reviews, I gotta feel strange about that. Like you're just uncomfortable. Like I'm uncomfortable, and he's not talking about someone who looks like me.
I'm
Imagine if,
uncomfortable too because I'm just trying to like again. I don't know that I just would never taste whiskey and be like, this tastes just like a woman I once had. Like I'm just
well,
trying to get there.
there's this whole culture of whiskey review. Like so much of it is like I'm on the back porch in a rocking chair, having my whiskey and a cigar, and I'm being contemplative. And
Right.
that's how I sort of piece together how I feel about this. And like, that's all fine, but I've got to imagine this guy's got editors. Like, no one at any point from between him writing it and this thing getting published, no one was like, "Hey, you want to take another crack at this one? Like, maybe go taste that one again and just come at it from a different angle, and we'll compare the two and see what's better."
Maybe treat it like a liquid.
Yeah, you know,
maybe not
can we
like
talk about anything that you're actually tasting and not like you're about to have sex with a Canadian woman?
or a Canadian whiskey bottle.
Yeah, like it's just
Like
there's no one, and that's the part of, without getting overly political, and screw it, feminism shouldn't be political, but um as you know, Ari, I'm a great feminist.
you are a champion of feminist causes for
I
sure,
am.
and always have been.
So I don't know if you know this, but my mother's a woman. Um,
You even voted for Wendy Davis once. That shows. I know I probably wasn't supposed to say that, but that shows how much of a feminist you are.
that's true. I love. See, it's just the plight is unnecessary.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason I bring that up
This is an
is,
example of why there is no women on staff for Jim with Jim Murray. Is that what you're saying? Like this is a good example
well,
of
no,
why.
but just big picture. Like here's this guy that's been doing this for this long, and because he's been doing it this long, no one will tell him, "Hey, this is a bad idea." It's just an old white guy who's been doing this for a long time, and everybody just lets him keep doing this creepy thing that he's been doing because he's an old white guy who's been doing this a long time, and it makes money, and the brand's advertising. So it just perpetuates.
Yeah.
So I'm really thrilled that this has become a big deal. Like aside from I have a daughter who will be inheriting a gigantic whiskey collection at some point. Um, aside from that particular reason, like it's just gross. Like I'm not a woman. He's not talking about me, but that didn't help me learn anything about this whiskey.
No, it didn't. It
Like
does.
I have
That's the most
no
important
idea.
part.
Like if I go to buy this, I don't have any concept of what I'm expecting here. Like I'm gonna feel like
So what's the lesson here?
The lesson here is stop paying attention to Jim Murray.
Right, but
Let's let
just
this
like
be.
I think you were about to touch on something that's really important, right? Which is like sometimes things perpetuate itself just because of history, and it's
Well, and
like
that's what I'm saying. That's
maybe
like
we
the
don't need
biggest.
that.
Like it's stupid that this is the biggest challenge in feminism. Just older men, and I say it's not like younger men can't be sexist too, but just people who have been doing the same thing over and over, and there's just this momentum of continuing to do it, even though it's terrible, even though it's creepy, even though it makes people feel uncomfortable. And as you well know, I'm very opposed to the whole PC everything.
Right.
Um, but in this case, and I
Right.
know some will argue what I'm about to say. Well, this is why all PC is important, but it specifically takes a class of people, in this case, women, who there's no reason that women shouldn't enjoy good whiskey, and it's going to make them feel weird about it. And this is the guy that we, as a whiskey community, put out in front and say this person's reviews are important. BS. Vote for me for whiskey feminist watchdog. 2020. I think that's the moral of the story, isn't it?
Yeah. And at some point we have to get our own whiskey award so we can knock Jim Marie off of his throne for sure.
I
That's
actually think this is a good idea. We should do this. I'm gonna get thinking about this.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll call them the whiskeys.
Yeah, and we'll talk about our past sexual experiences and how they relate to the whiskey that we're having. It'll be great.
That's Jeremy Mandel on Twitter at Jeremy Mandel. I am Ari Temkin on Twitter at Ari Sports. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not yet already. We stream live every Tuesday night, this show on YouTube, so go check out our YouTube page. And anywhere else that you are on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you are, we are watching.
And if you haven't noticed, we're on the podcast getting published on Thursdays now.
Yes.
That's not a this week change. That's just what it's going to be now.
Yes, exactly.
All
Thursday's more of a whiskey day anyways. Wednesdays was always weird.
And the
whiskey day.
podcast, I listened to a podcast about roller coasters, and that also comes out on Tuesdays. So it was very hard for me to deal with the fact that I had this other podcast that I wanted to listen to more than my own podcast because I want to hear about all the changes happening on Space Mountain. So this helps us, or really most importantly helps me, to spread out my podcast listening.
Leave the people with something, Jeremy.
Have a happy Thursday and fare you well.
That was funny.
I thought